I don't know about you, but I only trust the best. So if you're looking at getting your roof checked out, redone, these are the guys that can help you. Belter Roofing and Construction, they are the best. They'll come out, do a free inspection. You can trust them with your roof. Call them, Belter Roofing and Construction. 405-952-7777. That's Belter Roofing and Construction.
This is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position,
stand your ground,
and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Jake for the State podcast. And it is election season. We got the primaries coming up June 18th, just a few weeks away. So talking to a lot of candidates and giving you an opportunity to get to know who you're going to be voting for. So my candidate for today is Wendi Stearman, running for Senate District 29. Welcome to the show, Wendi.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
You bet. You bet. Well, you're diving into the Senate race, but you're not new to politics now. You served in the House, and we got a chance to serve across the rotunda from each other. While I was in the Senate, you were serving in the House at the same time, and it was always good to serve with you. And let's talk a little bit about your time in the House.
Okay. Well, as you may know, it's always great to be able to count on a conservative voice on the other side of the Capitol, and I always appreciated your voice at the Capitol. Prior to 2020, prior to 2020, I was homeschooling my kids, still homeschooling a couple of them. And that's all that I have really done in my adult life is homeschool my kids. I am part of a homeschool co-op that I started with a friend about 10 years ago, and that has exploded as so many things homeschool have. And so I run a co-op of about 200 families, and we have over 100 classes that meet weekly. But that is, it's all homeschool related. That's all that I've ever done until March of 2020, when the whole world shut down. And my husband, who is an airline pilot, was faced with, the possibility of no longer having a job. The entire economy shut down. Air travel specifically for many weeks during that time was shut down. And, so it affected our family significantly. And I was faced with the decision of, either the quiet life that we had known was threatened. And I love staying home with my kids and just doing that. But here we're faced with the possibility of not being able to do that in the future. If my husband's income is gone, I can't do that. And I love liberty, and this infringed greatly on all of our liberty.
Right. Was he able to survive the cuts there? I mean, not to get off on your husband, but, was he able to survive the cuts in the airline industry?
He did. And he actually was one of the few, they asked everyone, what's your comfort level? So he flies for a fractional ownership private jet company. So it's a worldwide company. And so, but it's smaller groups of people. So, a family or a business owner. And so they asked a few who's comfortable flying. There's this horrible disease that we're all afraid of. Who's willing to go out and fly still? Because there were still a few people who were considered essential that were still permitted air travel. And so he continued. He was able to work here and there, not as much as normal, because he was willing to, because, of course, he was not afraid of this impending horrible virus.
With a less than 1% mortality rate.
Yes, he did. He refused the vaccine, never did comply with that. And so it came down to the wire on that. He and many other pilots were very concerned, a year later when the vaccine mandates became so prevalent. And he was willing to give up his job for that. But thankfully that the company did not follow through. It came down to the final week. And the Biden administration, relaxed a lot of the expectations across the country. And so they were able to continue business without requiring that. So he did.
Okay.
He has not lost his job. He's still working. At the time in 2020, when everything started shutting down, I contacted my state representative, which is our closest connection to our government. Our state representative is our voice, our lobbyist in government. And so I contacted him and I said, prior to March 15th, I knew what my rights were. I knew that if I wanted to have 20 friends into my home, I could do that because I'm a free citizen. However, I contacted him and I said, now I don't know what my rights are. What rights do I have to stand on? Because I'm being told that I cannot do what I want peaceably to assemble in my own home. And he said, well, this is an emergency situation, so our rights do not, they're not in effect like they were prior to March 15th. And
your rights are not in effect.
I cannot vote for that representative. Whatever I do, I cannot vote for him, but I take my responsibility as a free citizen to vote very seriously. I knew I had to vote. And so I put my name on the ballot. At that time, I had. I'm gonna
rewind. I'm gonna rewind there just a minute, Wendi, just because I may have lost a signal there for just a minute.
Okay.
To just rewind a second, because you said that you appealed to your state representative, and I love what you said, that he's your lobbyist in the government. Yeah. I love the way you frame that. I mean, it's a different way of thinking about it, but to be your voice on going on your behalf as your elected representative, we have to just constantly remind ourselves and other people of that. But you appealed to him of, hey, how do we protect our rights? Your husband's job is being threatened as a pilot, and he said, well, your rights are on hold. They don't really apply right now. Wow. And so that was then the impetus to run, to say, wow, if that's what I have to represent me, I'm gonna go represent myself, essentially.
Yes. And God puts us in these positions where his will is going to be accomplished. And I never felt like I had to do this, but he put this opportunity in front of me. And I took it. And the day that I found out that my state representative was up for re-election was the first day of filing, which, is a 3-day period. I was not that familiar with state politics. We all follow federal government. And so it just had not occurred to me that he is up for re-election right now. And that day I had a couple of friends over, and I had just been telling them, getting on my soapbox, I will do whatever I can in the future to make sure that those representing me in government will defend the Constitution and will defend my rights. And, I just went on and on. I will do anything. And then that night at 10:30, I found out that he was up for re-election, and someone that I did not know at the time, I've come to know now, said, well, how about you? And I thought, what? Me?
Yep.
No. That's just
that
crazy.
Question. I know that same experience on my side. I was complaining about the government. My sister actually said, well, why don't you do it? And that just stuck, and I couldn't get away from it. And so, that's when you know. That's when you know.
Yep. Yeah. I knew at that moment that that pit in my stomach, I knew that if I did not put my name on that ballot, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I thought it was completely insane. There's no way. I knew his credentials. I know nothing about politics. I cannot be successful in this, but I will do what is before me, because I was begging God for direction. Tell me what, give me direction. I want to be a part of your plan. And then it was in front of me. And I've learned over the years, when that opportunity comes, when you are begging God for direction, you do not turn it down. You take that step of faith, no matter how terrifying it is. And so I did.
Exactly. And you just find the grace is there. You find the grace is there to do what you're called to do. It's beautiful. your time in the House, well, I want to get to what became, I believe, the hallmark of your time there, which was your abortion bill, which was, I believe, the strongest that we'd seen in the nation up to that point, kind of reflecting the bill passed in Texas. And I want to get into that. Before we do, since we're talking about COVID and these mandates and the reason that you got in the race, what was your experience in the House as far as dealing with that? Was there an appetite in the House to deal with this issue of federal overreach, of protecting people against the mandated vaccines and masking and shutting down businesses? What was your experience in the House concerning that?
Well, what my experience was in the public arena in the House was absolutely, we're going to do whatever it takes. What my experience was in the private conversations, the caucus conversations, no, they were not going to run it. They did not want to run it. We were told in 2020, the leadership said we will hear one bill. And the bill that was selected was by a representative who did not even want to run the bill. And he stood up in caucus and told us, I don't even want to run this. It was a weak bill, meant to do nothing, as so often is the case. As you know, we tried desperately to call a special session at that time because people were calling us, begging us to do something. People were crying, fathers calling and saying, my wife or my daughter is going to lose their job. Husbands saying, I need to be able to provide for my family. And just numerous contact from constituents begging us to preserve their rights to medical freedom. And
it was my first taste of the. It was my first taste and experience of the power structure in the Oklahoma legislature because I, as a freshman senator, was calling for a special session, which was a bold move. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had to do something. And it was immediately shut down by leadership saying, no, we're not going to address that, or we'll address it. We'll address it in session. And it never was. And so I was very frustrated, as were our constituents, saying, why won't you do something? And they're like, well, we're trying, but you're shut down by leadership.
Yeah, that was the experience. It was very frustrating. I did learn when I got in, of course, I've had a fairly sheltered life, just, homeschool families. And when I got in, I just remember being shocked by the environment at the Capitol. You know that there's there are corrupt politicians, there's wheeling and dealing going on. But what shocked me at the time was just in every single conversation with any legislator, you're actually, they're looking at how they can manipulate you. Everything is a game about how can I manipulate that person to accomplish whatever goal is set before me. And so no conversation in the Capitol is just a conversation. You can be talking about, your family back home or your likes and dislikes, your hobbies, whatever. Every single conversation, someone is looking for an angle to manipulate you and to affect you. And they don't even often, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about those that are there for the game of politics. They don't even necessarily care what the issue is. They want to know, can I manipulate that person? And so it was very shocking to me to come to that realization. And I've tried to explain that to other people. Politicians, those that are there for the game of politics, are not like other people. They're unique.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And they vote and they present bills based on how it will help them get elected or reelected. That's what I saw too. And so it's all about staying in power. Yeah. It's all about staying in power.
Mm-hmm. That's
I know. We could talk the whole podcast on that alone. Talking about your abortion bill, it was something you were able to get across the line and eventually make its way to the governor's desk, which was a huge accomplishment, especially as a first-time representative. And talk to us about that. What was the reason for running the bill? how you looked at Texas's model and some of the resistance you got in the process.
Sure. Well, the bill was House Bill 4327. As you said, it was patterned after the Texas heartbeat bill. In fact, the former Solicitor General in Texas, Jonathan Mitchell, was one of the co-authors of the idea. And so he assisted me in writing it specifically for Oklahoma. But I had asked him, can we rewrite it so that it's not just heartbeat, but it starts at conception? I want this to recognize that life begins at conception. Now, I did not run on the platform of going after the abortion industry. We had seen for 50 years attempts be made, and every piece of legislation was just a trophy piece to go on a mailer. Nothing did anything. It would chip away here and there, but not significantly. And so it really did not affect the number of abortions. No legislation prior to 2021 had really affected the number of surgical abortions happening in the state of Oklahoma. And so for me, I just felt like that was an area that I just didn't see any real hope for in the current environment in the legislature. And I did not want to run something for, to slap on a mailer. I wanted to do something that was actually effective. I ran on the idea of medical freedom and individual liberty. And so that was of most importance to me. However, I would let everyone know I absolutely defend life at conception. And that goes hand in hand with liberty. And defense of our basic God-given rights. Everyone has the right to life. So that was my belief, my core, but I had no desire to run another trophy pro-life bill. That just ended up in my top 8 because another legislator liked the idea of the Texas bill, didn't have room for it, asked me to put it in my top 8. And in the Oklahoma House, the legislators are allowed to have 8 primary bills that they can run. And again, it was just, I wasn't very excited about it. And when I was actually given the bill initially, it was not well written. It was just sort of written by House staff to look like the Texas bill. So I was not excited about it. I had no real intention of doing anything with it because it was just poorly written. But then I got in contact with Jonathan. My husband and I both started looking at some of his some of the resources that he had used to build the case for this idea, and I'll get into that idea in just a minute. And we were actually very impressed with the direction that he was going with this bill, and thought this might actually be an effective bill. You mentioned that it was shocking for a freshman legislator to get a bill like that through. It still shocks me. I still can't believe it. I saw it move through the system, and at every level I thought, well, this is a hurdle we're just not going to get over. We can't possibly get over this. And I had colleagues in the legislature in deadline week saying, you're never going to push this through. I needed an appointment with the speaker, and they said, you're not going to get an appointment with the speaker of the House to negotiate for this bill. This is deadline week. It just doesn't happen. And yet it just kept happening. And it just kept moving from one, from one hurdle to the next, and overcoming them. Now, I'm sure there was a lot going on behind the scenes that I don't even know. But God always has a plan, and I just left it in his hands. So the beauty of this bill, which when the governor signed it, the day the governor signed it, the last 2 clinics in Oklahoma closed their doors. The beauty of it is the civil enforcement of the bill. So we have criminal enforcement of abortion statute. And that was addressed through, at the same time, Nathan Dom's bill, which was Senate Bill 612. That addressed the criminal side. It reinforced the original legislation in the state of Oklahoma, which prohibited abortions, but increased the penalty. So that was very necessary. I would tell everyone, we're never going to stop all abortion in the state of Oklahoma, but I cannot have a state that condones it. And that was my focus. I will not have a state that condones abortion. We're never going to stop murder. We're never going to stop theft, but we do not condone it in our state. And that was really my objective on abortion. So anyway, we had the criminal bill going through at the same time as the civil bill. The civil enforcement bill is enforced in a court of law by a citizen. And as we know, people are unpredictable. And so for an industry to be affected by the possibility of a citizen being able to sue, in this case, the abortion provider, the threat of those lawsuits was great enough that they did close their doors. And so this was just a civil enforcement bill. The bill itself actually did nothing. It did nothing. It just set up an opportunity. It set up the opportunity for standing in court. So this is the will of the legislature that our judicial system in the state of Oklahoma recognize that the people can sue someone who takes the life of a baby before birth. So,
well, it turned out, like you said, to be very effective, closing down the last two remaining abortion clinics in Oklahoma. And then Governor Stitt, of course, signed it. What were your thoughts when the Supreme Court then ruled that it was unconstitutional?
So when the Oklahoma Supreme Court did that, well, I read their statements and their decisions. What I thought personally, this is a political move because their statements did not make sense fully. They just kept saying, well, because it doesn't explain specifically what, and I'm paraphrasing in my own words, it's been a year since I read them, but because the bill does not clearly define what it means to defend the life of a mother or a medical emergency, we declare this unconstitutional. But they never did rule out the original bill defending life, the criminal bill. So that is still in effect. They said that Nathan Dom's enhancement of that bill was unconstitutional and that the 4327 was unconstitutional, but they never went any further than that. So the ban on abortion still stands in Oklahoma, and it has not changed that. Now we still have the issue of the medication that you can get via mail. That's actually not permitted by law in the state of Oklahoma, but it's not being enforced. So here again, we have this law in criminal statute that says it's not allowed, but someone has to enforce it. And again, that was the beauty of the civil enforcement. You don't have to wait for the officials to enforce it. You, as an individual, can do it. So that's why that is such a beautiful, a wonderful, and effective idea.
So shifting here to your run for Senate, you know, a very stellar time, I believe, your time in the House, very effective, making a splash. What happened in your reelection campaign? I, too, had a reelection campaign that I lost. I ran into the wall of dark money. I think that you did as well. I saw some of the mailers being sent out. It's amazing that someone that did so much for the state, for her district, and for life in Oklahoma was attacked so viciously. Tell us what you kind of experienced during that reelection campaign.
Well, really, I mean, you summed it up pretty well. You know, the Oklahoma State Medical Association received a lot of money from the similar association at the national level, which I cannot think of the name, but the medical associations put so much money into any campaign, specifically ours, I believe, because we opposed the vaccine mandates. And even the state chamber issued statements that we are going to attack anyone who does not defend the vaccine mandates. And of course, I'm going to. So yes, there was money put into our campaigns, the expenditures, you know, that were undeclared, the dark money. And so that was somewhat effective. There was also in my district, there are certain people in the Bartlesville area who have a lot of influence at the state level. And they knew that, well, as was said, this is a direct quote, Wendi doesn't play ball. And it's true. When it comes to the liberty of the individuals, I will not compromise on that. I will not compromise on our constitutional rights, no matter what the offer is. And so there were people in my district who opposed that, and they're very influential. And they found the perfect candidate whose family goes back 150 years in this district. And it wasn't necessarily him who won, but it was that group of people who did.
Exactly.
They were successful. They did. I've counted it somewhat of an honor. They spent 3 times what has ever been spent in this district. And that's reported money, not even the unreported expenditures, the dark money. This is actual reported money. They spent 3 times what has ever been spent to get me out of that seat. And, for me, just a homeschool mom, to be that scary is, it's a badge of honor for me.
Exactly. And again, I've talked a lot about dark money. We'll continue to talk about it in these outside organizations, about both in the state and outside the state, that flood in for a particular agenda so they can ensure that they have their puppets in place to make sure that their policies are pushed through. It's a game, it's rigged, and we got to do the best we can to fight it. And the best way we can do that is by rallying the people to get behind the right candidates. Truly, the grassroots movement that we're talking about so much, we're seeing it swell. And what are you seeing out in your district right now?
Well, that really goes to the GOP. In Washington County, the GOP is very strong. We have very active precincts. We have a phenomenal group of grassroots patriots operating in Washington County with the main objective to hold legislators accountable and to make it mean something to be a Republican. In this state, as well as I, so many of the sitting legislators were Democrats fairly recently, and maybe they saw the light and they're changed people. Or maybe they realize that to be elected in the state of Oklahoma in the conservative red state, you've got to have an R by your name. And so our goal has been to make that R mean something. And if you don't like what that R means, then, there are other options. So we've been very effective in Washington County and, even at the state level. Wayne Hill is doing a phenomenal job. At the state convention this weekend, our Washington County chairman, Larry Murray, and I think he's been on your show. He was elected, and his goal has been all along to let the people direct the party. He's done a great job in Washington County, letting the members of the precincts direct what shall happen. He's just a facilitator. And which is the role of the executor of the party, is to be a facilitator. You listen to the voice of the people and you do your best to execute that. And so I'm very thrilled at the outcome of the GOP convention this weekend, the state convention. And I'm very hopeful for the future of the Republican Party as it is organized around the grassroots. And you say there's grassroots and there's establishment and we're all Republicans. Well, that may be, but we have a platform and we have a constitution. And so if you are adhering to that, which the grassroots people are, then, we're all one party. We are all Republicans. So we all rally around the platform and we make the platform reflect our values. And that's part of the process. If we want to hold Republicans to a standard, let's make a standard that's worthy of holding them to. And so, it takes time with 77 counties to make that process happen. But that is the ultimate objective, is to make the platform defendable and reflective of the values of the people of Oklahoma, and then to examine the voting record and the positions of the legislators and make sure that they are upholding the values of our party.
No doubt. You're entering this race against Senator Julie Daniels. I served with Senator Daniels during my time in the Senate. Has generally a good reputation as a conservative senator. However, recently, as of this last session, there were a couple of very concerning bills that had our name attached to it. One of them, SB 834, I believe. Is that the right number?
Yes.
Senate Bill 834, which connects us back to the abortion issue that you ran so valiantly on during that in the House. And now we see Senator Daniels ran this Bill 834 that would essentially open these clinics back up in the state. I spoke about it at large on my show on 96.9, the radio show. But talk to me about this, your concerns with this, and why this may be the most significant place of disagreement between you two.
Mm-hmm. There were two bills, essentially, that pushed me over the edge to put my name on the ballot in what I viewed initially as an impossible race. She has a lot of financial support, and I thought there's just no way to be successful in this race. But I had to make sure that people were looking at her voting record, and you do that by making sure that your legislators show up on the ballot. You know, if they don't have a challenger, they don't show up on the ballot. And there's no election. It is a free pass, a pat on the back, essentially. And there were two bills that just had to be challenged, which is why I started knocking doors last September. And as you mentioned, 834 was one, and that, on the whole, it was a good bill. There is some necessary cleanup language. Good, it cleans up a lot of the statute. However, the addition of exceptions in criminal code. I discussed earlier the difference between the criminal code and the civil code, the civil enforcement.
Right.
It incorporates exceptions for abortion. This new bill that Senate Bill 834 would incorporate exceptions in the case of rape, incest, and sexual assault. And that really opens the door for many opportunities. It has the potential to reopen clinics, but it certainly would allow medical abortions to start up again in the state of Oklahoma. So if that were to pass, thankfully it did not. There was a big campaign against it. But if that were to pass, we would be the first state in the nation to reduce restrictions on abortion, having limited it so much. No one else has gone backward. So bad bill. That was one of the. That's what started me in the direction of thinking I must challenge this voting record. And the other one was one that was lobbied heavily while you and I were there. A lot of information on it. It was a Senate Bill 1591, and it was the driver's license for illegal aliens.
Right.
And that one, as you know, there was so much information available on that bill. It was lobbied more than any bill that during my time, my 2 years there. And so, there are often cases where legislators will say, well, the language was dropped at the last minute, or I didn't have good information on that, and I made a bad vote, and, apologize. In this case, there was more information on this bill than just about anything I had seen. Everyone knew exactly what they were voting for, and my senator voted in support of that bill, which would legitimize the illegals that are in Oklahoma. So those two were what started me thinking I can't let that voting record go unchallenged.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that especially the issue with the illegal aliens having driver's licenses, the majority of Oklahomans have spoken on that and said, we do not want this in the state. When you look at the exceptions clause, it's kind of a mixed bag when you talk to conservatives across the state. And there are those that say, we are okay with exceptions with rape and incest, but talking about the actual end result of this and how it opens clinics back up. And like you said, it actually reverses progress in protecting life here in Oklahoma. It would have been, like you said, the first in the nation to do this. It's not the direction we want to go. Why give up ground when you've already taken it? We've already taken it. We need to stand and protect it. And this was just a weak move. I believe Senate Bill 834, I was totally opposed to it. But then you add on top of that this bill that would grant driver's licenses to illegal aliens, and very concerning as well. So when you're going out, Wendi, you're campaigning heavy and hard right now, all the way up until June 18th when the primaries happen.
Yes.
What are you hearing from the people in your district? We'll start with what you're hearing concerning their current senator. Are you hearing that they're happy and want to keep her, or they're ready for a change?
Well, at the door, most people are really nice. So they're very nice to my face and they really like what I have to say. But as far, I point out, I have my literature immediately gets into the driver's license for illegals and that vote. And of course, every red-blooded American despises that bill. And so they're completely offended by that. And then, different people have different experiences with her if they've even heard of her. And as you know, a lot of people are not familiar with who their state legislator is. And and so often the case, I share her name more than she does. But so but I'm hearing good feedback. And the one thing, what I let everyone know, and I don't think I've said it yet on your show, is the thing that offended me more than anything when I was in the legislature was the use of lobbyists and consultants to write legislation, to push bills through, to manipulate the votes in their favor. And because of that, and even before I ever decided to run for Senate, I was telling everyone that would listen, your voice is limited by the money that is in the Capitol. They are there. The lobbyists are there all the time. They are the ones building a relationship with your legislator. And that's who your legislator is listening to, not you. And so with that in mind, when I started running in September, I determined then I will not accept a dime from a lobbyist or a PAC of any kind, not a Liberty PAC, not anything, because I want everyone to know that my voice is my own, and that my vote belongs to the voters exclusively.
100%. And that's so rare. And that is the question I think that most people have is, who are you really? And how can we trust you? How do we know you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and that you truly are a Republican, that you will represent us? I mean, these are some of the just fundamentals that people are concerned with, because everybody knows what you need to have on a mailer and what you need to say at a doorstep to win. You need to be pro-Second Amendment. You need to be pro-life. You need to be, for individual freedom and small government and all the traditionally held conservative views. You can say all these things till the sun goes down, but how you vote tells the story, and how you represent and listen to the people. So that is what's on people's minds. And I think that is a huge testament that if you're unwilling to take any PAC or lobbyist money and to prove yourself to the people that you are who you say you are, that goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's what I'm doing. And what I tell people is, because I don't have the money coming in from those different venues, I am knocking doors to get the word out. So my opponent is sending, for the last 6 weeks, has sent a mailer a week. And you know how much those cost.
Right.
That's many thousands of dollars per mailer. I don't have that in my campaign account. So I have knocked doors every single week. We have not taken off a single week. And that's me knocking doors, not my team. I've been knocking doors every week since the middle of September. And it's been interesting. I've never knocked doors that consistently for that long of time. And it's been really interesting to see how the conversations shift as the seasons change and as the news, the news of the day changes. And it kind of shifts as a whole. At every door in September, the discussion was Governor Stitt and the tribal compacts. And then it shifted into Ryan Walters. And, it's just been interesting to see it all kind of shift as a whole. Every time I go out, the conversations are going to be different this month than last month.
And that's the way it happens up at the Capitol as well, right? I mean, it's constantly shifting. Yes. One week you're really focused on one issue, and the next week it's another. And so you have to have that flexibility and that understanding, that broad understanding of various issues in the state. Wendi, I'll wrap this one up to keep it in that time limit for these podcasts. And I want to have you back on to talk some more about marijuana, to talk about economic development in the state, to talk about the role of religion. I mean, there's so many other issues that I know you have your hand on that pulse and you get your feedback on that. So we'll have to do this again. But I think that the people get a pretty good idea of who you are and your values and what you stand for. But how can they find out more about you? Where's a good place to send them?
My website is stearman4senate.com, and there you can find contact info. You can send me a note or call me, and it also links to Facebook. And but that's where you can find me, stearman4senate.com.
Okay, guys, go check it out. S-T-E-R. Yeah, I was going to spell it too. STEARMAN for Senate.com. And I'll post the link on the show notes too, so you can go there and click on it and find it. Wendi, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your run for this seat. And we'll keep helping you spread the word.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate the invitation.
You bet. All right, guys, go check her out. I appreciate you guys tuning into the show. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned because we'll have more candidates coming up. See you then.